And now I would like to introduce our amazing hosts for the Guild Book Group, Leah Hogan and Danielle Green. Both are researchers, leaders, and professors. So Leah teaches at the University of Michigan and at Ann Arbor, and Danielle at the Claremont Graduate University. Let's welcome them.
I just committed the grave error of not switching on audio, but I'm looking forward to today's conversation, and I really hope that it is just a conversation that everybody who is listening in today feels the opportunity is open to them to contribute to. I think the most important thing about books is the fact that it's an opportunity for people to share ideas in a way that's highly structured, that enables people to access information in a way that is meaningful to them and at their own pace. And so, Danielle, I didn't know if there's anything that you wanted to share before we kicked off the conversation today.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I'm just happy to be here. Thank you.
So I will say this, we did a fair amount of pre-preparation. I have to shout out the support of Gori Parnaik, who's actually one of Danielle's students, who helped to put together the survey that we used to gather feedback from folks and do the analysis of that. So I don't know if she was going to be able to make it live today, but just want everyone to know she was amazing, and it was a great help to have her assistance. So, to that point, I think what I wanted to do is start with a little bit of, an introduction to what we considered as we came up with some of the not just books, but also additional resources that I think we're hearing about that people are using in our field. And they're just, I think, alert, they're not all UX research. Like a lot of it has to do with just some of the related disciplines, business, best practice, textbooks, right? And so just to give you a sense of where we were looking, we're looking at the publishers' information. So there are some publishers in our industry that I think everybody is familiar with: O'Reilly, Rosenfeld Media, Morgan Kaufman now seems to be an imprint actually of O'Reilly. So I had not seen that before recently. But we also looked at the Harvard Business Review and Apple Podcasts and Spotify top, and as well as Amazon bestseller lists, as well as the New York Times. So, just they're looking a little bit afield of where it is that we actually are. MIT, and as well some Medium articles and Substack articles. So I think if that gives you a sense for we're looking at podcasts and articles and books, it's really media in general that we're thinking about. So Danielle, when you're looking for books or other media to consume to kind of supercharge your professional practice, do you have any additional sources that you look to?
Ooh, any additional? I mean, events like this, it feels like whether it's in the chat or the speaker will drop something, and I am just so fast to pull up the notes app on my phone, and I just have a running list of kind of book recommendations that actual humans are sharing out in the world. So I think that's a big channel for me.
Yeah, that's, I think, a really salient point because one of the, I think, downsides of having AI slops trying to take over places is just non-human generated lists. Like, I think it's really important. The things that I put on the list, either I've read them myself, I have a copy, someone told me about it, or it's not just an AI recommendation. So, yeah. All right. So with that, I think I want to start with some of the key books that I found myself talking about, and as well that came out of the survey. And then I know a lot of you submitted recommendations as part of registering for this event, just so that you get a sense for what's timely and of the moment. So I think the first one, it's actually two, and I should have like put this as actually two books. One is Stop Wasting Research by Jake Burghart, and then a related book is um, essentially Scaling Research by Kate Towsey, or Research That Scales, sorry, Research That Scales by Kate Towsey. And those two books together, I not only teach U of M, but I also work at user testing. And I have to say, like, I've had a number of conversations with both of them over the last year. Kate Towsey's book actually came out in late 2024, which is why I didn't count it on the 2025 list. Jake's came out in 2025. And actually, an upcoming book club, we will be talking with him too. And I think the reason why those two books are so important is a lot of organizations are figuring out how to get more people enabled to gather insights. Notice I didn't say do research because it's not always research. And then also make sure that the benefit of all that work gets spread across entire organizations. And these two books are about one, providing frameworks and guidance and best practice for the gathering of both insights as well as doing of large scale enterprise research. And then also making sure that we don't lose track of all of that gold that we're creating with the hard work that we're doing as researchers. So, Danielle, I don't know, are there any additional recommendations that are related to those areas that come to mind that are important?
Published this year? That's the trick. Um, which I think we'll maybe talk a little bit about that
Yeah.
later, but I have some some 2024 things, 2023 things on my mind, but I think those are two well, I haven't yet read Jake's book, but I think Kate Towsey's book was great.
Yeah. Well, actually, to that point, what were the 2023 and 2024? Because I think it's okay to scoop ourselves, like to basically say there's not as much published in 2025. So the oldies but goodies were what really dominated the feedback that we got. So
Yes, absolutely. I can't remember if it was 20, I think it was 2023 when Jeff Sorrow, Jim Lewis put out that survey book, and that was just the survey book I've always needed as a UX researcher that I've looked for and always needed. So that one stood out to me. And then similarly, Chris Chapman and other folks writing the quantitative UX research book. I think that one came out last year, maybe late 2023. And that one was also a finally the quant book that I've been wanting for years now. So those two stand out to me as like tactical books that I have really enjoyed recently.
oh my gosh, I have to say, I've marked up my copies with lots of writing and plenty of post-it notes as well. What I love about both of them is for each chapter and each point, they have cited multiple either studies that they have done or other work. So they are like, if you need, it's like a researcher's research manual for best practice on all of the little minutia around how to launch really good quantitative user research, both
Yes.
service and then like quant usability, quant anything. Yeah,
Yep.
I love them. I agree. Totally agree. Shifting gears a little bit, I think another high level topic that's really important is really the fact that a lot of organizations are in a much more intentional way working towards making more accessible experiences. And so not just making sure that their apps or websites or even physical experiences are accessible by people who might be using assistive and adaptive technology. But also really thinking in the broadest sense around, it's not just keyboard alternatives and screen readers, but it's also how do we support people who are neurodiverse, who don't hear well, who might have mobility challenges as well, and how does that shape their experience with the world? And so one book that I really appreciated when it first came out, and then it came out in a second edition this year was, and I hope I'm not mauling her name, Regine Gilbert. She's Canadian, and her book is called Inclusive Design for a Digital World. And I think one of the things that I really loved about that book was just it's very practical. It has great recommendations for just frameworks and as well, how do you think about marking up sites with ARIA labels? So like how do you actually do the work of making something more inclusive? So that is just like an amazing book. I will probably get myself a copy of the second edition as well. I've got a copy of the first edition already too behind me. But in that space, Danielle, are there any additional oldies but goodies or things that came out that um, have been influential in your work?
Yeah, so when it comes to inclusive design and accessibility, I really loved Regine's book. I loved what she was trying to do. There are some editing things that upset me, so I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm looking forward to the second edition. The content's very good.
Yeah.
Um, I go back to A Web for Everyone as a good accessibility book that's approachable for folks just getting into accessibility. And I also really think a good approachable book is Mismatch by Kat Holmes. Love that one. Um, that's one I recommend to students. I teach an inclusive design course, and that's one I've used as well. I think there's a lot of good content in that book. And I think design justice is another one that is still like a big you can't talk about the accessibility and inclusive design space without mentioning design justice.
And that's by Ruha Benjamin for those who, yeah,
Sasha Costanza
yes, Cook, Costanza.
Cook. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that is an awesome.
Ruha Benjamin's book, though, is very good too.
Yes. Well, they have very similar titles. I think that's different areas of coverage, right? But um yeah,
And
I
I'll
think
pop some
they're
of those in the chat as well.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was seeing everybody saying, "Oh, are we going to have the list?" We will absolutely have the list out there. So, we'll make sure that that's available. It will have links, it will have all the authors' names. Yes, all the things, because we 100% understands that everybody's going to want to go out and run and buy these books because we do that too. And if you don't buy them, go get them at your local library and it's not all books, right? So we're going to be talking about some other things as well. Okay. So I think the like continuing, and I'm going back a little bit, and I just got a copy of this book myself. Another book that's about research operations. So if you're sensing a theme, this is like a big thing. Like I think people are really considering how do we professionalize connecting with people in large enterprise spaces. User research, improve product and service design, and enhance your UX research by Stephanie Marsh. And she actually is a researcher from the UK who has leveraged her experience in just doing the work and also added, I think, some additional intelligence around research operations. Because I know Kate Towsey also had mentioned that's a book that she has really enjoyed a lot. So, um, I guess to that point, Danielle, do you have anything else to add there?
That book is one that I am so looking forward to. It's top of my list. So I'll probably get to it in the next couple of weeks now that the semester's coming to a close. And I am just so excited. I work for Autodesk, and at Autodesk, we have this really robust service design practice and a lot of really great service designers within the research team. And I'm looking forward to this book, just connecting the dots with some of those. So, no, and I can't wait to read this one.
Yes. It's also, I think, very aesthetically pleasing. I love the color, and it's just, it feels, I don't know. It's like, there's some books that actually have like a physical feeling. You're like, oh, I just love holding it and reading it. I am a book person, like, really. I will also say, I think that reading could also be done with audiobooks. If the e-reader makes something more accessible to you because you can mark it up and go back to things and hop around and all that, whatever works. But I am a paper person personally, for the most part. I mean, you can see I've got paper all around me, so my house is a fire hazard.
I'm super curious, folks in the chat. I'm super curious. Audio, what percentage audio, what percentage ebook, what percentage physical book? Because I think I'm like a 30-30-30 kind of split.
Yeah, that's legitimate. I think, one of the things that I still am waiting in the school pickup line, so sometimes I need that audio option. So I listen to podcasts very frequently there. We'll have some podcasts too. But I see there's paper people, physical, audio, split, right? So where you are dictates that. Sometimes I actually get the digital copy because I need it right now, because for work purposes, I need it right now. But then I'll also back up and get the paper copies so that I can have it with me on the plane, for example. I do a lot of reading on the plane. So I also buy a lot of duplicate books at the airport. Don't tell my husband. So
Guilty. Yeah.
yes, yes. Awesome. So I think I wanted to shift gears a little bit to talk about some of the themes that we saw. And I think there are a couple of things. One is it's really hard to keep up with the speed of change in books because with AI and all of the changes in technology that we've seen, I don't think that our publishing like print cycles have quite caught up. So a lot of the things that I think are particularly timely are happening in the either they're short courses that are being offered, there are papers that are in either preprint or just, they're papers instead of full-length books, podcasts, newsletters, shorter form things that are more about the technical piece, and then the theoretical piece, which I think is moving at a little bit of a slower clip because humans are still humans, right? Like we process information with the bodies that we have, right? Um, those are things that tend to be happening at book pace. So just I wanted to share some of the podcasts and books and articles and then the sources as well that some of them you may have heard of, some of them might be new to you, that are places that are kind of at the center of this, keeping us on top of stuff. Yes. So, Jacqueline, here we are. Here we go. So, I'm going to start with a couple of the ones that are associated, a couple of podcasts that I think you probably are familiar with, but Awkward Silences, which is the user interviews one, Insights Unlimited or Insights Unlocked, that's actually from user testing. I do a lot of those myself. I host a lot of those conversations. Nielsen Norman Group, that's another one, has, I think they're primarily YouTube videos. And Lenny's podcast, if you're a product person, he's got an accompanying newsletter that goes along with kind of follows along, promotes, and enriches what it is that he's having in terms of conversation there. Um, Danielle, did you want to add anything? I'm going to pause with my list there.
Yeah, plus one to Lenny's over the years. And I think Lenny's podcast is doing a really good job of keeping kind of at the edge of product and UX considerations as it relates to AI and emerging tech and things like that. So big fan of Lenny's. Um, One that really helped me this year was John Whalen's podcast. Yes. So John Whalen created this podcast. He's the one who wrote the O'Reilly book, Designing for How People Think, I think is it's called.
Yeah.
And he has done a podcast reviewing AI tools for UX research and UX design. So each podcast episode is its own like tool deep dive, usually with like the founder of the tool or someone representing the tool. That has been so helpful as just trying to understand what tools are emerging, what tools are out there, comparing them all, trying to, get tools onto my team at various places, expose my students to tools. So that's been huge for me this year.
Yeah, and he is just brilliant himself and just one of the nicest people. I think he's great. And I think we also have, I know I've been able to do interviews with him in a couple of different venues. So if you just even look up his name, he's kind of everywhere. He talks to everyone about these topics.
Hmm.
Yeah. Love that stuff. Yes, he's got a couple of courses on Maven that are like really, I think, in the best way, in the weeds. So, how do you do prompt engineering in order to actually create synthetic users, for example? That's a really, I would absolutely like, I think everybody, no matter where you are in the spectrum about how you feel about AI, you should educate yourself about synthetic users. I know we could have actually a whole conversation just about that. So, um, but I think another couple of resources that I always look to. So, User Interviews does a state of user research kind of like map every year and survey and just talks about like what are people doing, what tools are people using, like where where are the intersections between the capabilities of everything. And I just think that it's a really great overview of just what people are using out there.
Oh yeah, I every year is like the day that thing's posted, I'm there.
I download it. Absolutely. I take a look at it and download it. It's awesome. And then I think another couple of ones, the research ops community. So there's a Slack channel which you have to apply to get to. They update that. Um, maybe quarterly, I think. So you have to, wait a little bit sometimes to join. And I also think that mixed methods, that community and blog is very helpful because again, just UX researchers writing articles about all sorts of things, quant, qual, AI, all of that and the Epic blog. So ethnographers, I know they had a really great time at their conference earlier this year and a very interesting keynote about AI. I was going to talk about that a little bit later. And some of the things I'm seeing from I keep seeing 404 Media too. But any other communities or podcasts that you're hearing about, Danielle?
Hmm. Communities, podcasts. Um, I follow a few Substacks.
Ooh, that's
Yeah. So if you, especially again in the AI space where everything's changing so rapidly and it feels like it's impossible to keep up with everything, I'm a big fan of Ethan Mollick's Substack on AI, and he wrote a great book called Co-Intelligence that I think is a good read for those wanting to get a sense of the AI space. So he's one that I follow. There are a few other Substacks that I follow in that group. Um,
That's a new one to me. I have not heard of that one, so I'll have to go and do a little bit more digging there.
Substack or Ethan Mollick's book.
Molochs, yeah. Substack I'm
Yeah.
familiar with, yes. I
Okay.
think a lot of people are having conversations, which is better, Medium or Substack or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah.
Why not both?
Yeah.
Right? Always. Um, yeah, Ethan Mollick wrote this great book called Co-Intelligence, and I just think it's a really good, hmm, even, reasonable. It's positive, it's cautionary. When did that come out? Maybe 2023?
Not sure. I
Yeah,
have
so
not.
I'll post about that one. That's a good AI book that I recommend to anyone. It's very approachable. But it also doesn't it's not too high level. He actually gets into some of the details, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that concept because a lot of us may not be like in the weeds yet with AI and just getting that kind of top-down view of just like how does it work rather working from and this is how this particular algorithm, right? The textbooks, which if you want textbook recommendations, I went out and found some, but don't necessarily have to go there.
Yeah, on that top, like the reverse, so there are textbooks which everything everything can't get be published fast enough. Like I'm finding it's really hard to teach this subject
Yes.
because I'm going through my courses and as I'm teaching in the semester, I am making changes to, oh, I don't know that we need to really learn that way anymore. As of last week, as of Figma Make being coming out in September and things like that where it's like, okay, pivot. But one good AI book that I liked that I recommended to my mom, it's one of like, I think it's good for anybody to get the how did we get here and what are the implications of AI, is called Mastering AI by Jeremy Kahn.
Okay.
Jeremy Kahn. And the reason I like it is it was written by a journalist. That's why I like it. So it's actually interesting to read.
A little bit more pop science. Yeah.
Yes,
I
yes.
think important to keep in mind. And actually, um, I love that concept because I think there's a lot of debate in the community, in the AI community around the future of AI and just getting a sense for what the potential pathways in the future might be is very much informed by that history. So, yeah. All right. See, now I've got stuff I need to add to my list. That's great.
I know. You'll see me. I keep pulling out my phone because I already have three that I need to
Like,
read.
okay, I'm just depending on our list because I'm here in the moment.
Yes, yes.
So another area, so Lou Rosenfeld, for those of you who probably know, is one of the founders of Rosenfeld Media, and he wrote an article, very short article last week, um, about the fact that the future of book publishing is professional book publishing is very murky. And I think one of the things that I wanted to just encourage everybody who's on this call today to think about is you probably, if not, if you don't have a book in you, you have a friend that might. And just because we've got artificial intelligence does not mean that the value of creativity and pushing new boundaries and coming up with frameworks and all of the work that goes into making us better practitioners. Um, because we have AI does not mean that we shouldn't continue to function as thinkers and creative problem solvers and creating content for slow consumption for those purposes. So I wanted to recommend reading that. And then also to encourage you to be the next person that we're talking about in a year or two. I think it usually takes at least a year to write a book, but so maybe 2027 we'll be talking about your work. But I think it's important to just be optimistic about the future of ideas because humans really, I think, will remain at the center of what it is that we do as people, what it is that we create. And that means that it's even more important for us to continue to be the primary creators of really compelling content. So, anyway, Danielle, I didn't know if you had any additions to that comment or recommendations for things to read that amplify that message.
I mean, I think it's a good message to hear right now. I I was in the process of toying with writing a book. And as AI kind of came in and upset, disrupted lots of areas, it was probably what stopped me from writing, actually. Um, so I guess it's good to hear this message from you, Leah, because I really value your perspective. Maybe it's a worthwhile adventure, even if it's just for personal fulfillment, right? So, but I know it's a tricky place to be to spend your time writing a book and then wondering not just like will it be relevant, but also like will it be consumed by AI and are you even going to be able to share it in the ways you want to share it? So it's a tricky space, and anyone who's authored a book, I think, is probably having little moments of grief and things. Also, just reading so many books and assigning so many books to students and whatnot, I'm noticing that, there are chapters here and there in these oldies but goodies, but there are chapters that don't resonate as of 18 months ago now. And so there was a book I was thinking about UX strategy by Jamie Levy. And this was one I was just thinking about last week that so much of that book still holds true. Yeah, and there was a second edition published just recently in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And but now I think that there are two chapters that are sort of in need of a revamp because of how things are changing so rapidly. So I wonder how rapidly new editions of some of these books that have, really stood the test of time. I wonder how rapidly some of these things are going to be turning around.
Well, that's interesting because, I feel like there might be like the future of the editions of the paper book. I was downloading a book recently from Rosenfeld Media and just like, realizing so I typically buy the ebook plus paper book versions. And if that becomes the norm, because usually I buy the paper book from when it comes to like fiction or other publishers. But I love the flexibility of having that ebook option too, because I can always download that to my iPad or to, my Kindle and read that. And then when I'm at home, like pop over to my library and visit it too. I mean, actually, I really love the physical books because I do mark them up and dog ear the pages and everything. But when I want to make a reference to a student or something, that ebook version is also helpful. Like at U of M library, that's great.
Yeah. I wonder what it's all going to how things are going to change in the next few years when it comes to publishing and when it comes to putting, new editions of books and things like that. I wonder if that those cycles will get a lot quicker.
I hope so, actually. Um, but I think we have yet to figure out like how to make that work from a business model perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Randy, I just saw your message about dog earing. Yes, that's an old one. But that's an old-fashioned term for turning the page, like folding it over so that
In the corner. Yep.
corner. Yeah. All right. So shifting to what are a couple of the buzzworthy articles? So I have been seeing and talking about and hearing everywhere a couple of papers that I think have just been really influential. And I just wanted to kind of put out there, like, you should go read the original papers for some of these things, because a lot of times they hit the news headlines and people like misinterpret what the papers are really about, or just on a very surface level talk about the whole point of the paper. And I think the first one that I wanted to talk about is the title is AI Models Collapse When Trained on Recursively Generated Data. And that's by a group of folks, Shumalov, Zhao, Paperno, Anderson, and Gall. It was in Nature this year. And I think it is highly technical. So if you're not really into reading highly technical stuff, it might be a little bit hard or challenging reading. But essentially, the bottom line is the way I interpret it is uh, the future of researchers and content creators is safe because AI slop does a really terrible job of training LLMs. But Danielle, I don't know if you've heard about that one or read about that one, but are there other AI related articles that kind of give you hope or maybe cause for concern about AI?
I'm gonna have to read that one. That one isn't in my like list of bookmarks. And and to that point, I think although I read a lot of articles and I'm on this current this constant cycle of grief and hope, right? When it comes to AI and reading some of these new articles. So I don't think any one like pops out to me as something that I would say this that maybe came out this year. I think it's just it feels like a constant trickle of like okay, little incremental things when it comes to articles.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I think a couple of the sources that I'm seeing that are kind of a part of that trickle, the MIT Media Lab, partially because a lot of the papers are coming from Stanford and MIT. I'm going to also recommend the Stanford AI lab as well. And they're doing a lot of work around just understanding like how, well, I would say different labs and different teams seem to be doing a lot of work around, are the impacts good for people?
Hmm.
And so I mean, and actually I'm reading through kind of the titles of these papers, but it really is a lot of, so are we better students when we use LLMs? I think the answer has so far been no. um, uh, are we better thinkers and workers? And so far, I think that the research tells us sometimes, but it depends on whether the use cases in our particular context of use align well with the capabilities currently of AI, and then also whether or not we're good enough prompt engineers and do we understand about like the enhancements that are coming with these new reasoning models to be able to leverage the technical capabilities of these new models. And like to your point, like I did a I recently did a presentation about prompt engineering and like which model to use in order to do certain things. And I had to go through and completely revamp after 6 months, a presentation that I did because the models that we even have in use at U of M have completely changed.
Yes. I
So,
know. I've slowed down on giving talks and things, especially things that are recorded, because I don't want my history from 3 months ago to come back and bite me. Because I'm gonna make some claim like, oh, LLMs cannot blank. And then in 3 months I'll be like, I stand corrected. Never mind.
well, I think that what I try to do is frame everything with a cannot now do it,
Right.
but
Smart.
may be able to do it at some indeterminate point in the future.
Good.
Emphasis
Smart approach.
determinate. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I've done some interesting like queries like asking like AI or asking LLMs out there like what can LLMs do? And a lot of it come is hallucinations and I just you have to know what the capabilities are because they're just always going to hallucinate this, but about 75% of the use cases they propose are not currently possible. So,
Yep.
eh. All right. So, a couple of things as we round the bend into the later part. I think that uh another article that I really liked. So one example of what it is that we were just talking about was your brain on ChatGPT. I love that article. It's from MIT. Um, and another podcast that we hadn't yet talked about, but I love for holiday. Like last year, the Hard Fork podcast did like a top 100 tech innovations that they partially crowdsourced and partially came up with themselves. And it was like great holiday driving listening. Because I mean, the technologies that they brought up were like hilarious and their approach to talking about it was hilarious. But I just like that podcast in general for tech news, especially in the AI space, because they bring a lot of people in to have conversations with them about just the insider news on how AI is actually happening in Silicon Valley, and then also just decoding what's happening in the world. So may or may not agree with them, but it's like if you want the inside baseball on Silicon Valley, like that's the thing to listen to. Do you have anything else that you listen to that's kind of like that?
I'm loving this like holiday driving listening. That's got my brain turning. Things that I listen to like that. Oh, I don't know. I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of audiobooks. So nothing like that comes to my mind. I was just pulling up a couple of articles that I came across earlier this week. So there's a website that I'm going to drop in the chat called Humane Bench, and it's benchmarking like the humanness of LLMs. Have you seen this, Leah?
I have
Um,
not.
it's yeah, I'll drop the link in the chat, but this is one that I was very it's sort of humane tech principles and it ranks all of the models. So isn't that an interesting thing?
Well,
Um,
this is interesting because, I think probably a lot of us have heard about the alignment issue, right? So just how do we make sure that AI doesn't try to end us all? And this is like one way to actually rate how these LLMs are working. Ooh, I love it. And
yeah.
I love the information design. That's really cool.
I loved it too. I think I came across this yesterday or the day before, and I have it on my this is fresh for me, and I haven't really processed all of it yet, but I have it in my to weekend list. So this is what I'll be reading about this weekend.
Oh, this is so fascinating. Okay, I absolutely am going to be looking at this more. Love it.
Yeah.
Great recommendation. Um, all right, so I want to actually share some oldies but goodies that I like find myself going back to again and again that I love. And I actually, because most of these I have on paper, I actually put a stack next to my computer so that I could like do some show and tell because I love doing it. And of course, I'm gonna like totally upset my stack. But ooh, hopefully you heard that. Um,
We didn't, but based on where you're grabbing, I'm thinking, Leah, that's a large stack.
It was a large stack, and I grabbed this one from the bottom,
Impressive.
but I had to go there first. It's a thick book, but I love this book. Cost justifying usability. And all the chapters, my personal favorite is chapter 6, are really all about like how can you go about letting your teams know that there is business value, like a tangible dollar value. If it's dollar value, it can be something that is, measured in another way. But what KPIs can you use? The equations that you can use, thought starters. A lot of it's back of the envelope math, and it's just like serves as a great prompt for communicating out to your teams the value of the work that we do from both a research as well as a design perspective. And with all the stuff that's happening right now, like, yeah. So, Natalia, you were saying he was your professor. I got to meet him the year that he was nominated or that he won the Lifetime Achievement Award from UXPA. And he was just one of the nicest people. Like, I hope that was your experience with him too.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So good to know. Great. Absolutely love this book. It is not as dog-eared as some of my other books, but I have definitely used that. I think I will leave those on the floor because they're on the floor. But a couple other ones that I think are really good are, and I feel like I should copy and paste these, but I think somebody else is doing this for us. The 100 Things Every Designer Needs to Know About People by Susan Weinshank. And again, she's a doll, but it's a slim volume that just has really great, like, here's how humans work. Here's what the here's what the principle is. Here's an example of how to use it. Go. So it's really like a great handbook for designers, especially. But I think that as researchers, we ought to know what those best practices are. And also, she's a experimental psychologist on the other end, so just it's a lot of it is it's a great resource for a lot of the seminal papers on how people work too. Um, and then I'll do a third one, which is um, and actually goes a little bit farther afield. Well, actually, not as far afield. The one that came up the most in kind of all the recommendations that came in the survey and the registration was Just Enough Research by Erica Hall, which she republished through Mule Books this year because A Book Apart folded operations, I think late, like very surprisingly, earlier on this year. And so that one people keep going back to because I think has very good approachable recommendations for how to figure out when to do research and then what to do when you decide that you actually are going to engage. So Danielle, I'm going to turn off my screen for just a sec while I try to go and reconstitute my stack. But
Stack.
what recommendations do you have?
Oh, we have covered a lot of my favorites. Let's see here. Um, yeah, I really hmm, I really love that survey book only because I wanted a survey book, a real rigorous survey book for 10 years, and that thing finally came out. And of course it was Jim Lewis and Jeff Sorrow. So that's the Measuring You group. They also wrote Quantifying the User Experience, which is a very statsy book that my students really don't care for, um, but that I continually use in class.
So there's actually the book, and then there's a companion workbook that has both R and Excel examples that are meant to be, it's essentially meant to work as a textbook. Yes, I don't care if you don't like doing the math, you should know how to do the math.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to maybe that book getting an update because I think there are some just like if it were organized maybe a little bit differently and maybe a few more examples actually in a couple of topics would probably solve most of my students' problems. And all of my students have to take a year of very rigorous statistics. So so they a lot of them love stats, but they still grumble about that book. I just can't find a better one though when it comes to applying quant.
I agree, and there are ones that are even denser, so totally get it. But to talk about math, Karen, I see that you say math is wonderful. I retrieved this from the floor, Weapons of Math Destruction,
Yes.
Kathy O'Neill. Yes, yes. She is not only, she is a great speaker too. So if you get a chance to see her speak, I absolutely recommend going to chat with her. I love this book because it really is about like how do we ensure that big data is used for good? And how can we really look for symptoms of big data being used not for good? And for you product people out there,
Of
continuous
course.
discovery habits. This has been, I think, one of the most contentious books because I think a lot of people read this and thought, where's the space for the UX researcher? And I think just overlooked, and I actually dog-eared this page because I was like, no, no, researchers are in there. But there's very much a space for researchers that she talks about, but it is how do you ensure that you are incorporating feedback into the process of picking the big bets and then making sure that you are representing things in such a way that everybody knows what the potential work could be, and then using feedback from people to inform your roadmap, the work, how to do it, like all the things. I really like this book.
And it's just a little thing. It's
It's,
just a little thing. I don't think Teresa Torres knew what that book has been a darling in the product UX community for a solid few years now and
yes.
very impactful for being such a nice, concise little book.
Yes. And then I also kind of like to your point, the Costanza cookbook that you recommended. I like this one because it's got case studies of people using research like in an applied way in order to change policy and
Oh,
influence, yes, and influence like court cases.
and it's called Just Research,
Best research in contentious times,
Contentious Time.
widening the methodological imagination by Michelle Fine. And it's a little tiny book, but it's got some really compelling case studies for how to use research as a means of moving people and getting them to think in very practical ways. I love that one. And then this was a recommendation from a friend of mine because we were bemoaning the fact that we were just like all over the place. So I'm going to close with this recommendation, Deep Work by Cal Newport. But, we're living in this attention economy, and it's sometimes hard to kind of extract yourself from that space where there's so much happening. And I think that this book is really about providing some recommendations for how to carve out space to think again. But I didn't know if whether there was anything else that you wanted to add, Danielle.
I don't think, a non-UX book that I read that I just personally got a lot out of is just a book called Validation by Caroline Fleck, and it's just a book on communicating and validating other people. I found it very applicable to qualitative interviews. So, and also management. And also your personal life. But yeah. So that was one that came out this year that was just, I read it in a day and it was like, oh, okay, good, great, love it.
Well, I have not read that one. I'm going to have to do that. So love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I hope that, like me, you are walking away with some ideas for where to look next for your next read. And hopefully, you come and join us for future conversations. And I'm at this point going to turn the conversation back over to Raymond to close us out for the day.
Thank you so much, Leah and Danielle. How delightful. I think we could all listen for a long time to your recommendations, your experience with these books. It's been awesome.